The strange request. The twin moons of planet Varel hung low in the sky, glowing pale blue over the city of crystal towers. Shadows stretched long across the glowing streets as Zek walked home, his mind already planning something unusual. He was tall for his kind, with silver skin and eyes like molten gold. And his walk was quick, almost impatient. Tomorrow was Lyra's birthday, and she had been talking for weeks about wanting a pet. She was his younger sister, smaller, with bright green eyes and curious little antennae that twitched when she got excited, and she had been excited for days. Zek found her in their shared home, sitting cross-legged on the floor, looking at a holoscreen that displayed small alien animals. "Look, Zek," she said, pointing at a round, fluffy creature that spun like a ball when it moved. "I want this one for my birthday. It's cute. It's small. It makes funny sounds." Zek smiled, but there was something strange in his smile, something Lyra didn't notice. "That's nice," he said slowly. "But what if I get you something better?" Lyra tilted her head, her antennae twitching. "Better? You mean like a rarer pet?" Zek only shrugged, his golden eyes glinting. "You'll see," he said, turning toward the door. "When will I see?" She asked, half laughing, half curious. "Tomorrow. Be patient, little sister." He left before she could ask more questions. Outside, the city buzzed with life, but Zek didn't stop to talk to anyone. He headed straight for the space docks, where his small ship waited. The plan in his mind was risky, maybe even foolish. But he had heard rumors about something far more fascinating than any ordinary pet, the kind of gift no one on Varel would expect. As his ship rose into the blackness of space, the twin moons shrinking behind him, Zek set his course for a hidden location deep in the asteroid belt. It wasn't on any official map, and it wasn't the kind of place you visited if you wanted to stay out of trouble. This was the Forbidden Market, a place where traders sold rare things, creatures from distant worlds, artifacts from forgotten wars, and sometimes things that weren't supposed to be for sale at all. The journey was quiet, but Zek's mind was loud. Would Lyra like it? Would she even understand? She had asked for something soft, something harmless. What he was planning to bring her was neither. Hours later, Zek's ship slid into the asteroid field, weaving between massive rocks that floated silently in the violet void. He followed a faint signal until a huge shadow appeared. A space station built into the side of a hollow asteroid. Its lights flickered like it was alive, and dozens of small ships floated around it. Zek landed and stepped inside. The air in the market was heavy and smelled of metal. Creatures in cages hissed, chirped, or growled as he passed. Some had wings, some had scales, and some shimmered like liquid when they moved. Merchants shouted prices, showing off their goods. To anyone who looked, Zek walked past all of it until he saw something in the far corner. A cage. But not like the others. Inside, sitting on the floor, was a boy. His skin was pale, his hair dark and messy, and his eyes were sharp, alert, and unafraid. He looked maybe 12 years old, but there was something in his gaze that felt older. Zek had never seen a human before, only heard stories that said they were clever, dangerous, and impossible to tame. The merchant guarding the cage stepped forward. "You have expensive taste," he said with a low laugh. "This one is from Earth, hard to find, harder to keep." Zek studied the boy, who stared right back at him without blinking. "What's his name?" Zek asked. The merchant shrugged. "Won't tell us, won't talk much, but he listens." "I think." Zek's mind was already made up. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the challenge. Maybe it was the way the boy didn't look afraid. "How much?" Zek asked. The merchant named a price that made Zek's stomach tighten, but he paid without arguing. Minutes later, the cage opened, and the boy stepped out. He didn't say thank you, didn't ask questions. He just looked around, then at Zek, like he was studying him. "I'm Zek," the alien said. The boy didn't reply. Zek motioned for him to follow, and together they walked back to the ship. Zek could feel the boy's eyes on him the whole way. It was like walking with a wild animal that was smart enough to hide its teeth until the right moment. When the ship left the station and the stars filled the windows, Zek finally spoke again. "You're going to be a birthday gift," he said, almost amused by the thought. The boy's eyes narrowed. "I'm not a gift," he said softly. The first words he had spoken, Zek only smiled. "We'll see." Back on Varel, Lyra was waiting, pacing in the front room. She didn't know what her brother was bringing, but she felt something deep in her stomach, a strange mix of excitement and unease. Whatever it was, she had a feeling her birthday was going to change everything. The Forbidden's Market. The journey from the asteroid belt to the Forbidden's Market wasn't easy. Zek's small ship had to slip through narrow gaps between tumbling rocks. Some were the size of houses, others as big as cities. One wrong move and the ship would be crushed into shining dust. But Zek moved with skill, like he had done this before. Maybe he had. But he never told Lyra about these trips. The market itself was hidden inside a giant, hollow asteroid from the outside. It looked like any other piece of rock floating in space. But once you slipped past the right set of coordinates, a hidden entrance appeared, black metal doors taller than a tower, slowly sliding open. Inside was a tunnel lit by flickering lights. The tunnel curved down and down until it opened into a huge chamber full of ships. Every kind, sleek silver cruisers from the core worlds, rusted cargo haulers from forgotten colonies, and even ships that looked patched together from scrap. Zek stepped out and felt the air shift. It was heavy here, smelling of smoke, oil, and something faintly sweet that made you dizzy if you breathed too deep. The market had no rules, no government. Only deals made in whispers and guarded with knives. Rows of stalls stretched in every direction, cages stacked 3-4 high, each with something alive inside. Strange animals blinked at him with too many eyes. Some had feathers made of glass, some were nothing but shifting clouds of gas inside. Force fields, merchants shouted prices in dozens of languages, their voices echoing under the metal ceiling. But Zek wasn't here for any of that. He walked past creatures that would have made Lyra squeal with joy, past rare pets that could sing, dance, or breathe fire. None of them mattered. He had heard about something rarer, a creature from a distant, dangerous planet, a world called Earth, at the farthest corner of the market, where the light was dim and the crowd thin. Zek saw it, not it, him, a boy maybe 12 years old, sitting inside a reinforced cage. He wasn't curled up or hiding, he sat straight, eyes scanning the crowd like he was memorizing every face. His hair was black and messy, his skin pale against the dull gray walls of the cage. He didn't look afraid. That made Zek stop. The merchant leaning against the cage saw him. "You looking to buy, friend?" he asked, voice low. Zek didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, studying the boy. The boy's eyes met his, and for a second, it was like looking into the eyes of another predator, silent, calculating, patient. "What is he?" Zek asked, though he already knew. The merchant grinned, showing teeth filed sharp. "A human. From Earth, hard to catch, harder to keep." He tapped the bars. And the boy didn't even flinch. "This one's been here a week, doesn't speak much, doesn't beg. Just watches." Zek folded his arms. "I've never seen one before." "Most haven't," the merchant said. "They're quick, strong for their size, and their minds," he tapped his temple. "Their minds are sharp, too sharp. Keep them as workers, they learn your trade. Keep them as pets, they learn your weaknesses. Give them a weapon, they might take your place." The boy tilted his head slightly, still staring at Zek. It was not a scared stare, but one that seemed to ask, "What will you do?" Zek thought of Lyra's birthday, of her expecting something soft, harmless, and obedient, and suddenly, he liked the idea of giving her something that was none of those things. "How much?" Zek asked. The merchant named a number that made even Zek's stomach tighten. "You could buy a small ship for that price," Zek said. "You could," the merchant agreed. "But ships don't think. They don't plan. They don't surprise you. Zek transferred the credits, and the merchant's grin widened. The cage door opened with a heavy hiss. The boy stood, stepped out slowly, and looked up at Zek without a word. He was thin but not weak, his movements careful. Like every step was measured, Zek could feel it. The boy was dangerous, even if his hands were empty. "What's your name?" Zek asked as they walked toward his ship. The boy didn't answer. "Fine, I'll call you Kai," Zek said, trying the sound. Still no reply. Just that silent, steady stare. The walk back to the docks felt longer than before. Zek noticed the way Kai's eyes flicked to every exit, every armed guard, every control panel. It was like he was memorizing a map in his head. Zek wondered if this gift would try to escape before they even reached home. When the ship finally lifted off, the market shrinking into darkness behind them, Zek sat in the pilot's seat and glanced at Kai. "You're going to meet my sister," Zek said. "She wanted a pet. I thought you might be more interesting." Kai's eyes narrowed. "I'm not a pet," he said quietly, his voice steady. Zek smiled. "We'll see." Behind them, the asteroid drifted in silence, hiding the market once again. Ahead, the stars stretched endless, and somewhere far away, Lyra was waiting. She had no idea what her brother was bringing home, but when she saw it, nothing on Varel would ever be the same again. The gift revealed the silver sky of Varel was just turning gold when Zek's ship slid through the clouds. Its shadow swept over the glowing rooftops, past the crystal towers, and down toward the narrow streets where his home stood. Inside, Lyra was already awake, pacing the floor. Her antennae twitched every few seconds, a habit she had when she was both excited and nervous. She had tried guessing all night what Zek's better gift could be: a winged lizard, a talking bird, a rare mooncat with fur that shone like ice. But when the door slid open, none of those guesses prepared her for what stepped in behind her brother. Zek entered first, his usual calm smile on his face, and then came Kai. He was taller than Lyra expected for someone her brother might call a pet. His hair was dark and messy, his clothes strange, simple but worn, and there was something about his eyes. They didn't wander like a curious animal's would. They locked straight onto hers, sharp and still, like he was already studying her. Lyra's antennae froze. "Lyra," Zek said, stepping aside with a small wave of his hand. "This is your birthday gift." She blinked. "My what?" "He's called Kai," Zek continued, his voice casual. "He's from a planet far from here. A place called Earth." Lyra laughed once. A short, confused sound. "This is not a pet, Zek. This is a person." Kai tilted his head slightly, almost like he found her reaction interesting. "I told you I'd get you something better," Zek said. Lyra folded her arms. "And how is this better?" Kai finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying something she couldn't name. "I'm not here to be better," he said. Lyra frowned. She looked at Zek, then back at Kai. The air in the room suddenly felt heavier. She didn't like the way Kai was looking at her, not with anger, not with fear, but with the kind of focus that made you feel like you were a puzzle he was already halfway to solving. Zek broke the silence by leading Kai toward the inner room. "You'll stay here for now," Zek said. Kai glanced at the window, then the door. Lyra noticed it, the way his eyes lingered on every possible way out. Her stomach tightened. This didn't feel like having a pet. It felt like having a guest you weren't sure you could trust. Later that day, Lyra tried to talk to him. She brought him a plate of food, something simple, fruit slices and warm bread. Kai accepted it without thanks. Sat down and ate slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Do you have pets on your planet?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light. Kai swallowed. "Sometimes," he said. "And were you one?" she asked, half joking. Kai's lips curved in the faintest shadow of a smile. "No," he said, "but some tried to make me one." The way he said it made her feel colder, even though the room was warm. That night, Zek went out to trade supplies. Lyra was left alone in the house with Kai. She told herself it was fine. He was just a boy, maybe a little older than her. But every sound in the quiet house seemed louder. At one point, she heard something, the faint click of metal. She peeked around the corner and saw him near the window, holding a small, thin piece of metal. His hands moved with slow precision, trying to work at the window's lock. "What are you doing?" she asked sharply. Kai looked at her, completely calm. "I don't belong here," he said. The words made her pulse quicken. She didn't know if he meant the house, the planet, or something much bigger. When Zek returned later, Lyra didn't tell him. She wasn't sure why. Maybe she wanted to see what Kai would do next, or maybe, deep down, she was afraid of what Zek would do if he knew that night. As she lay in bed, she could hear the faint creak of the floorboards. Somewhere in the dark, Kai was still moving, still searching, and Lyra realized that tomorrow, her birthday gift might not be here at all. The first night, the twin moons rose high over Varel that night, casting silver light across the crystal streets. Most of the city slept, but inside Zek's home, the air felt strange, heavy, like a storm that hadn't broken yet. Lyra couldn't stop thinking about the way Kai had looked at her earlier. Not rude, not frightened, just watchful, like he was always calculating something in his head. Zek seemed calm, almost proud of his strange gift. But Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that Kai was not here to stay after dinner. Zek showed Kai the small guest room, a bed, a narrow table, and a tall window with a locking panel. "You can rest here," Zek said. Kai stood in the doorway for a long moment before stepping inside. He didn't say thank you, didn't even nod. He just looked around slowly, his eyes stopping on the window before drifting to the doorframe. Zek left without noticing. Hours passed, and the house grew quiet. Lyra tried to sleep, but her antennae twitched at every sound. It was nearly midnight when she heard it. A soft, deliberate creak from the hallway. She slipped out of bed, bare feet silent on the floor. The sound came again, from Kai's room. She peeked through the half-open door. Kai was at the window, the moonlight outlining his thin frame. In his hand was a sliver of metal, the same one she had seen earlier. He worked it against the window's lock with steady, careful movements. The sound was faint, a click, a scrape, a pause. He didn't glance back, even though she was sure he knew she was there. "What are you doing?" she asked quietly. Kai didn't stop. "I told you. I don't belong here," he said, his voice low but clear. "This isn't my home." Lyra stepped inside, crossing her arms. "If you leave, where will you go? You don't know this city. You don't know the world." Kai finally turned his head, and in the dim light, she saw something in his expression. Not desperation, but certainty. "I don't need to know it," he said. "I just need to get back to mine." Before she could answer, the lock gave a sharp click, and the window slid open a fraction, letting in cold night air. Kai glanced at her one last time, then closed the window again, locking it with a quiet push. It was almost like he was saying, "I can leave whenever I want." He set the piece of metal on the table, lay down on the bed, and closed his eyes without another word. Lyra stood there for a long time, her thoughts tangled. Part of her wanted to tell Zek, part of her wanted to see what Kai would do next. She left the room, but sleep didn't come. Every creak of the floor made her think he was on the move again. Every gust of wind against the walls made her feel like the house wasn't as safe as it used to be. In the dark, one thought kept coming back to her. If Kai was planning something, he wasn't just thinking about running away. He was thinking about how to win. Secrets uncovered. The next morning, Zek left early to handle a trade in the city. The house felt bigger without him, but also more exposed. Lyra stayed in the kitchen, pretending to clean, but her eyes kept drifting toward Kai's closed door. He had barely spoken during breakfast, just sat eating like someone counting the minutes until he could leave. Hours passed, and the silence in the house began to itch at her nerves. Then she heard it, a soft murmur, too quiet for normal conversation. It was coming from Kai's room. She crept closer. her bare feet silent on the crystal floor. The door was open, just a crack, and she peeked inside. Kai was sitting on the floor with his back against the wall. In his hands was a small device. No bigger than a stone, it glowed faintly blue as he spoke into it in a language Lyra didn't know. The words were sharp, clipped, urgent. Her antennae twitched, trying to pick up more than just the tone. She caught a few sounds that almost made sense. Rescue. Window. Midnight. Her stomach tightened. Rescue? Was someone coming for him, or was he the one planning something? She leaned closer, careful not to make a sound. Kai's voice dropped even lower. Target not hostile. Repeat, not hostile. Lyra's pulse quickened. Who was not hostile? Him? Her? Zek. Then, just as suddenly, the device went dark. Kai looked up, straight toward the door. Lyra froze, heart pounding. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Kai smiled, not warm, not friendly, but knowing. You like listening to other people's business? He asked. His tone wasn't angry, but it made her step back. She began. Spying, he finished for her. He slipped the device into his pocket and stood, walking toward her. His steps were slow, but each one felt heavy. Don't worry, Lyra, he said softly. If something happens, I'll make sure you're not hurt. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. The rest of the day, Lyra kept thinking about those words. Rescue. Window. Midnight, she started watching the sky more than usual, searching for anything unusual among the clouds. The streets looked the same, the air smelled the same, but everything felt different now, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something. When Zek returned that evening, he didn't notice her quiet mood. He talked about trade prices and crystal shipments, while Lyra sat at the table, nodding but not really listening. She kept glancing toward Kai's room. He was there now, sitting by the window, not trying to open it this time, just watching the sky like he was counting stars. And Lyra had the strange feeling that when midnight came, the stars might not be the only things out there. The midnight surprise. Midnight on Varel was never truly dark. The twin moons painted the streets in silver light, and the crystal towers caught that glow, scattering it like cold fire across the city. Most people slept peacefully, unaware that the night would not stay quiet for long. Inside Zek's home, Lyra lay in bed with her eyes open. She had tried to sleep, but Kai's words from the day, rescue, midnight, kept echoing in her mind. Her antennae twitched at every faint sound. She sat up, listening. The house was silent. For now then she saw it, through the window, a brief streak of light across the sky. It wasn't a shooting star. The glow was steady, purposeful, and growing larger. Another appeared, then another, until 5 bright trails were cutting through the moon's light. They were moving fast, and they were heading for the city. Her pulse quickened. She slipped out of bed and crept toward the hallway. Kai's door was open. He was already standing at his window, his face calm but his eyes locked on the approaching lights. They're here, he said, not turning around. The words made her stomach twist. Who's here? She asked, even though she already knew. My people, Kai said. Don't be afraid. Unless Zek tries to stop them. Before she could reply, the first sound hit, a deep, vibrating hum that rattled the glass. Outside, the lights grew sharper, revealing sleek ships cutting through the clouds like knives. The city alarms began to wail, a sound Lyra had only heard once before during a storm disaster. Crystal lights along the streets shifted from gold to red, warning everyone to take cover. From the docks, smaller ships rose into the air. Varel's defense fleet. Lyra pressed her hands to the window, watching as the two forces closed the distance. She saw flashes in the sky, quick bursts of light as warning shots were fired. But the human ships didn't turn away. They dove lower, their dark hulls catching the moonlight. One of them passed so close overhead that the air shook. Zek burst into the house, slamming the door behind him. Lyra, get away from the windows, he shouted. His eyes darted to Kai. What did you do? Kai didn't flinch. "They're here to take me," he said simply. "They don't like me being in cages. They'll destroy half the city trying to get you." Zek snapped. Kai tilted his head slightly. "Then you should decide. Stop me, or let me leave." Outside, the human ships spread into formation, surrounding the district like a tightening net. Searchlights cut through the night, sweeping over rooftops and streets. Somewhere far above, a deep, rumbling voice boomed over the comms. "Target located. Prepare for retrieval." Lyra's chest felt tight. She didn't know if she wanted Kai to go or stay. She only knew that if this retrieval went wrong, Varel might not see another dawn. The choice the human ships hovered above the city like dark shadows against the twin moons. Their engines roared low, a sound that vibrated in Lyra's chest. Searchlights swept across the streets, crawling toward Zek's home like pale fingers. Inside, Zek stood between Kai and the door, his stance wide. "You're not leaving," he said, his voice firm but low. Kai's eyes narrowed slightly. "If I stay, they'll destroy everything around me to get me back," he replied. "And if you go, they'll take you back to where?" Zek demanded. "A place you wouldn't understand," Kai said. Lyra stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "Kai, if you go with them, will they stop?" Kai didn't answer right away. His gaze flicked to the window, to the shifting searchlights outside. Finally, he said, "They will." For now, the house shook as a low thrum rolled across the city. A warning from the human flagship above. "Surrender the target, or we take him by force." Zek's jaw tightened. "You're not a target," he said. "You're my sister's gift." Kai interrupted. His voice wasn't mocking, but there was something sharp in it. "I was never yours to give." Lyra moved closer to him. Her antennae bent forward, a Varel sign of trust. "I don't want you to be a pet," she said quietly, "but I don't want you to leave and never come back." For the first time, Kai looked uncertain. The engines above grew louder, the air vibrating like a drum. Time was running out. Then Kai reached into his pocket and pulled out the small device Lyra had seen before. He pressed a button, speaking in a strange language. The lights above shifted, slowing their search. He turned to Zek and Lyra. "They'll back off if I tell them to. But I have to go with them, or they'll come again." Zek didn't move. Lyra's eyes stung, but she nodded once. "Then go," she said softly. "Just don't disappear forever." Kai hesitated for a heartbeat, then stepped toward the door. Before leaving, he glanced back. "You're different," he said to Lyra. "You didn't see me as a thing to own. That's why I won't forget you." He walked out into the night, and moments later, the human ships began to rise. Their lights faded into the stars, leaving the city silent again. Zek stood beside Lyra, both of them staring at the empty sky. "Do you think he'll come back?" she asked. Zek didn't answer right away. "Maybe," he said at last. "But if he does, it might not be as a gift." Far above, somewhere beyond the moons, Kai sat in a human ship, looking back at the silver glow of Varel. In his mind, the choice wasn't over. It had only just begun.